Off With Their Headlines with your hosts, Amanda Matta and Meredith Constant. We're back, despite all the odds.
Against all odds, Phil Collins, because listen, a little how the sausage gets made, if you will. I am in the middle of a move and selling a home.
We really picked the best time to start a podcast,
I'm so
Meredith.
glad we started a podcast in late December. What a great idea. It's such a good time
perfectly
right now. Amanda, your birthday, by the time this comes out, it'll be your birthday.
Not just my birthday. In my defense, it is my fiance's birthday, my dad's birthday, my younger brother's birthday, my father-in-law's birthday, all before the 3rd of February.
I love in my defense. Wait, is Shane a Capricorn or an Aquarius?
Yes, he is a Capricorn.
Yes, we established that. I'm a December Capricorn, so I'm a different kind of chaotic. Yeah, so Amanda has all the birthdays going on, and I am in the middle of a move. We usually record on Mondays, but I didn't have internet.
Yep.
And
famously something you need to remotely record a podcast.
This is just my way of saying that we worked very hard to get an episode out this week. So, be patient with us, but we have a lot of fun things coming up. As always, you can check out our Patreon. The link is in the bio. I thought you'd like that.
Yeah, I do.
Little not French
really
accent, whatever that was. I know you were stunned. And you can see that on video over on Patreon, because that is where you get ad-free episodes, and you get the episodes a little bit earlier, usually on Wednesdays. We usually drop on Thursdays on the free feed. You also get the video right away at a certain tier. Other than that, you do get it a week later on YouTube. And also, we've had very interesting conversations last week based on the Meghan and Harry Vanity Fair article, which was free for anyone who is on our Patreon. You don't have to pay, but you can just be a free sign up. We do discussions over there, and really good conversation about the Vanity Fair piece.
Yes. So we will link the Patreon to go check out in the description. Lots of different options for keeping in touch with us on there, as well as on our socials. We do have an Instagram for the show. It is Off With Their Headlines on Instagram. Meredith and I keep up our own pages as well. All of that's linked in the description for you.
You can find all the things, but let's hop into this episode. We are going to start off with a bearing the lead, which is going to tie in very nicely to our follow-up on Prince Harry's NGN settlement with Prince Harry, because there's some shady wording that we have seen about Harry settling, when really he accepted a settlement on his terms that was agreeable to him, and NGN paid a historic 8 figures and had to issue an apology, which the Telegraph is reporting on honorably.
Not the word I would have chosen.
I know. So here is the article in question. Meghan and the money. Say what? : Are these the real reasons that our lost royal has finally settled? Rather than lay bare the tabloid grievances that have tormented him, Harry accepted a settlement from home. The question now is why? Well, I'm not an expert, not a legal expert, but perhaps could it be because NGN finally offered him what he had been looking for, which was an apology, admitting wrongdoing by the Sun, which in the past, Rebecca Brooks, then editor, said, everything's above board at the Sun, and we run a tight ship, apologizing to his mother, as well as an 8-figure settlement. I wonder why he could have chosen right now.
It's a mystery, truly, especially if we want to poke fun at Harry, which, this article, if it was written by anyone else, could have been an interesting piece, which we keep saying. But because it is by who it is by, we go off the rails about halfway through.
It is from the royal editor, Anna Furness, who is now the royal appointment writer. She took over from the author of that piece last year. And it's very strange. I mean, not strange. Of course, they're circling the wagons around an outlet that Harry is attacking. But when you're on the side of the billionaire owner, that is really making if you're a serious journalist, this is a mockery of your profession, know, and you're kind of, it's the noble dragon slayer has laid down his sword. He didn't lay down his sword. GN was like, please don't take this to trial. Here, 8 figures. We're even going to apologize. This is framed as if it's not an historic settlement that was offered.
It's frustrating too, because there's no indication that this is the end of the road for Harry. It's not that he's gonna just stop talking about this. There are all these pieces in this article laid out to kind of almost distract us. It's like, okay, he's a family man who is forging a life on another continent. He is focusing on his issue of security in Britain. His Spotify deal is over. His polo show didn't generate buzz. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you know humans can pay attention to multiple things at the same time, especially when you have lawyers in your corner who can command a room such that you can get an 8-figure settlement? Like, did you know?
I also take issue with the fact that she seems to think it's a problem that Harry didn't jet set out to Britain, and says, quote, far from jetting into Britain to lay bare the tabloid grievances that have tormented him for so long, he accepted the settlement from home. Yeah.
Okay.
Prince Harry was never going to be at the opening of this trial. It's a 9 to 10 week trial, depending on who you're asking.
Right.
Most likely was going to fly out at the point of having to give evidence, like he did in the case with the mirror. And this was a last-minute deal that came in
Right.
to the extent that Justice Fancourt said, really, guys? Really? And we're really doing this now? We've had a lot of time for this. This was a last minute. Harry was supposed to hop on a plane to fly out to do this. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, because obviously NGN was going to bring the 10-figure settlement in bags from, what's the retailer that King Charles allegedly accepted money in bags from?
Oh, I forget.
We're not stuffing cash in bags here that we have to directly hand to Prince Harry to take
There are other
settlement.
ways to do it. Harry said, Venmo my ass. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Zell that. Zell that. But no, it's these drumming up a story to create this story of who Prince Harry is and what this says about him, where there isn't any. Yeah. This is very normal procedure. There is no reason why he would have flown out for the start of this trial or at the last minute, because there's a potential settlement that he could accept.
I'm sorry, can you explain to me why the lead here is Meghan and the money? I don't understand that part.
Further down, like way far down in this piece, the settlement comes at a strange time for the Sussexes. Meghan's Netflix show postponed after the Los Angeles fires, a blistering Vanity Fair cover. As you said earlier, the Spotify deal ending. And so it makes it seem like that Prince Harry, it seems like they're implying that Prince Harry did not have the money to go forward with this. But
because of Meghan? What?
They do not explain that at all. And to be fair to the writer, it is a copy editor. Somebody else is writing this headline, and clearly it's an SEO grab. But they don't explain that anywhere in the piece. It is one of the most misleading headlines that we have seen.
Egregious.
It's bad. It's real bad.
Wow.
And it's not just tabloids doing this, okay? I mean, this is not a tabloid doing this, but they do not make it clear what Meghan has to do with this, besides the fact that she also does business things.
And is married to Harry?
And even the money part. What exactly are you trying to say here?
Well, they even bring up last year a reputable U.S. magazine whose report has never been contested by the Sussexes team recorded that the Duchess of Sussex wished Harry could let go of these lawsuits and live in the moment, wanting him to be free of all of this despite understanding that his love for her and their children meant he could not. So, like, doesn't that undermine their point that, oh, it's Meghan that made him take this? I don't know.
None of it makes sense. It is... I think, let's be honest, what they're really upset about is that they were going to have a potentially 10-week trial to excoriate Prince Harry over, to talk about, think of the rumors we were going to hear about, the couple in crisis. Meghan steps out alone amid the drama of whatever. Body language expert says, we were never going to hear there were olive branches at the ready to extend to Harry when he came over
Charles
to the UK.
And Harry were 6 miles apart. Yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah, Harry wanted to meet with his father and brother, but they were too busy. King Charles was hiking solo in Transylvania, which is still my favorite reason for not meeting with his youngest son. I had to go hiking in Transylvania. What do you want from me?
couldn't possibly move that. No, not at all.
Listen, Transylvania gets very popular that time of year. I'm sure I've never been to I'm sure it's lovely. Anyway, so
Nosferatu has entered the chat.
This Count Chocula has entered the chat. Just kidding.
Oh God.
That goes deep. So that leads in perfectly to just a brief update on where we are with the case. So The Guardian put out this piece that was titled Police Request Transcripts from Prince Harry's Case Against Owner of the Sun, which seems like a pretty big deal, right? They have requested the transcripts of the pre-trial hearings in Prince Harry's phone hacking case. There has been a growing call for the Met to actually investigate this, because what has come up in pre-trial hearings is that there is an alleged cover-up of the mass deletion of emails during the phone hacking scandal by executives like Rebecca Brooks, current Washington Post CEO Will Lewis, to basically come up with this lie that there was a security threat. And that's why they had to blatantly ignore and dismiss the police telling them, do not delete anything. And they deleted millions of emails that could have maybe implicated some higher up people.
Sure.
So now there's a question about that, about the cover up and not just the crime. The Met Police have requested the transcripts. We know that former MP Watson, who was the other claimant still left standing in this case, is working with his lawyer to gather a dossier to send to the police with even more information, especially on that cover up. Here's where you kind of lose a little bit of the air in your sails, or whatever. Like, I'm a sailor. I don't know what the phrase is. Near the end of the piece, we see someone from the Met say there are no current criminal investigations into this. And they also say that a lot of the information that was used pre-trial was evidence from them, which kind of makes it seem like, maybe this is not the glowing slam dunk that we thought it was. And then you hear from NGN again. And we talked about this last week, about the way they worded their apology, especially in terms of the Sun. And this is what a spokesperson for NGN said. It must also be stressed that allegations that were being made publicly pre-trial and indeed post-settlement that News International destroyed evidence in 2010 to 2011 would have been the subject of significant challenge at trial. These allegations were and continue to be strongly denied. Extensive evidence would have been called in trial to rebut these allegations from senior staff from technology and legal. So that's NGN saying, we apologize
for other stuff.
We didn't admit to that. So just FYI, if that had come up in trial, here's what we were going to do. So don't think we think that this is, we're not copping to that. Let's be clear here. We're saying, yeah, maybe the Sun did some stuff like, wasn't like really nice. Sorry about your mom, but we're not going that far.
Right.
Because they still want to protect themselves. We also heard that the Labor government, I called them the liberal government last week. My apologies. I can't believe no one yelled at me. But the Labor government has already said we're not doing a Levinson Part 2, which could be seen and is a letdown. But also considering the fact that Levinson 1, which was an inquiry into bad behavior with the media, resulted in this huge report with recommendations for legal change that the conservative PM at the time, David Cameron, said, you know what, that's nice and all, but nah. How effective would Levinson 2 have been looking into police collusion with the media, which seems potentially timely here. My hope is, although I don't hold out a lot of hope here, is that there is something better and more effective that perhaps they'll do. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they settled should not be understated, right? There was something that they didn't want us to be focusing on for 10 weeks. They didn't want us to learn about in the public sphere, whether that was related to the deletion of emails or to the communications between NGN and the royal household. We won't know unless there is a further inquiry. I love that Hugh Grant is quoted in this Guardian article. The actor Hugh Grant reiterated his call for the police to act, saying, I think what they're terrified of is that these findings would trigger a new criminal inquiry. So
I love your British accent.
It's not so even good. British. It was just I was trying to get the cadence down for Hugh Grant.
I liked it. Remember, Hugh Grant has also been the Prime Minister of Britain.
Yes. So
in Love Actually,
we can't understate
that
a former Prime Minister.
Bring back PM Hugh Grant, I forget his character name.
And
I feel
Natalie,
like
First Lady
and
of Britain.
I think Natalie
Mhm.
could have brought him the chocolate biscuit and said, "Hey, we really got to get serious again on this phone hacking stuff." And I think Hugh Grant would have been the one to do it.
What we could have had in a
Call up
different
Hugh.
universe, this is what is currently happening. But again, so NGN, they don't have to cop to any of this, to your point. So they're not going to until there is a new inquiry. So whether that actually happens, we have to wait and see if there's enough evidence to spark that. It's complicated and interesting at the same time.
We will, of course, have, as more news comes in, we will continue to follow this story. I have a question, Amanda.
Yes.
Billy Bob Thornton in Love Actually is the president
Mm-hmm.
of America,
Yes.
the United States of America.
Yes, ma'am.
And he hits on Natalie.
Mm.
Looking back, maybe that wasn't so far of a stretch. It felt outlandish at the time that you would have Billy Bob Thornton acting that way, portrayed as the president of America. But
I would take that.
I would take that over what we have now.
Sadly.
And we are going to talk a little bit about the inauguration.
Yes.
We are mostly going to focus on the fashion and the royal cosplay of it all, and a little bit as well into First Lady fashion of the past, because there's a fabulous Vanity Fair piece that dug into this, was obsessed. But I think the first thing that really caught my eye is that despite an America First policy, right? We're going to have tariffs that somehow Americans aren't going to, pay for.
They don't know how tariffs work, Meredith. It's so clear. They don't know how tariffs work.
Nobody knows anything. So what was interesting, though, despite this America First policy, is that almost no one wore American labels. Besides, technically, Melania wore, his name's like something Pierre. He
made her hat.
He's from France. And he's the one that has done her inauguration gowns the last 2 years. Okay. And he came in, and I think he was originally from France or was born to French parents in America. Either way, he's American, but it's the most French sounding name ever. So it's very interesting, because typically we've seen in the past that when there's been this America First push, they tend to try to show that in the brands that they're buying from. And yet here we are, and it doesn't matter.
It is interesting because this is something you see in royal fashion as well, where wearing national designers, like Kate wearing British designers, is always seen as like an ace up their sleeves in terms of diplomatic dressing. And for a while, women in the American political sphere were kind of taking cues from that. They have pivoted away from being intentional in how they build an outfit to being more intentional with what they are projecting with their outfit. And we will talk to that point a little bit later. But yeah, do you have any examples of like past First Lady looks that you think did the proud to be an American thing particularly well?
The Lee Greenwood of it all. So what I find interesting is Lisa Kathleen Grady, who is the curator of American political history, reform movements, and women's political history at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. Sounds amazing. You go, girl. Has this quote in the Vanity Fair piece that I pull most of this from. That is, why do we care what the First Lady wears? She is considered to be the First Lady of American society. She is going out and representing us across the country and around the world. And I found that interesting because we pretty clearly will talk about that, yeah, the First Lady is wearing things because there is a deeper meaning. And yet, when you do that too much, talking about specifically royal women, you will hear it's just an outfit. It doesn't mean anything. Well, of course it means something. Fashion is political. So the first America First message that we really saw in a First Lady look was Caroline Lavinia Scott Harrison. And she had a gown that was made in New York City. The silk was domestically produced. It was filled with all the trimmings. What's interesting, though, is that the aesthetic fell in line more with Victorian tastes. So despite it being America First, the influence of globalization and influence from around the world and old European societies was still very much on display.
Yeah. The question is, who gets to dictate what society, capital S society, is? And at the time, I'm sure there was a huge push to emphasize that America can play ball on the same level, which is why you have an American designer making something for a first lady to keep up with the more global socialites and politicians that she would be hosting. So that makes a lot of sense. Currently, the first lady in the US, I would say, is representing American society in a much different way, where we are so polarized. You're going to be speaking first and foremost to your base. And that has different visual cues depending on what side of the aisle you fall on. I think of something like the suffragettes wearing white when they were campaigning for the vote, and now leftists, women on the left side of the aisle will wear white suits to signify female empowerment. Something like that is not necessarily the messaging that would come across when someone like Melania Trump is wearing a white suit. In that case, it would probably be more of a jab at leftist political
Oh my gosh,
thought.
that's a really good point. And it's also fascinating to see who uses these opportunities to elevate a designer, because we've seen that a lot with Meghan wearing these more affordable pieces. Remember the J. Crew sweater, you know, the cardigan that shot across the world. But Michelle Obama wore J. Crew gloves during, I believe, the first inauguration, communicating that she was the first lady of the people. And we've seen Kate, Princess of Wales, do that as well. We've seen her mix in these affordable pieces. Oh my gosh, those are 20-pound earrings, you know, woman of the people kind of thing. And so it's interesting how some of that has been mixed in depending on the economy at the time, and what their husbands, because we haven't had a female president yet, are inheriting. But also, Michelle Obama put Jason Wu on the map. She wore that one-shouldered silk chiffon gown that was embellished with all these organza flowers and crystals, and also that red halter dress that she wore at the second inauguration. Look it up. The way he placed the shimmers so that when it moved, it's just even, it looks like it has movement in still photos, which is a testament. But putting these designers on the map, and that's something that we've also seen from Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Perhaps Kate. I don't know as much about Kate's fashion.
Kate definitely has. The Kate effect cannot be understated. The singular designers that she tends to highlight are a little bit elevated. You have people like Andrew Gin, Susanna London. What's the one that makes all the coat dresses? Catherine Walker, those kind of brands. But it's interesting that we get to talk about royal fashion and US First Lady fashion in the same breath, because it is, I think, historically, the urge to promote American society goes hand in hand with how princesses of Wales and queens of the United Kingdom have promoted British society. It's only recently that I think there's been a shift in intention behind dressing these women. I did just publish a video essay on YouTube about this, which is why it's top of mind for me, because now you have women at the heart of the Trump administration, Melania and Ivanka included, literally dressing like royals. So they're kind of turning their backs on the way that first ladies of the political world have traditionally dressed themselves, and they are turning towards this image of themselves as the people's princess, but in America. And it's so frustrating. It's really cathartic to dive into it, and that's why I kind of made the video essay. But they do take on this image of exclusion with their fashion these days, which I think you see sometimes in Melania's fashion, especially. You noted the "I really don't care" jacket in our outline.
Oh, that is, you can't forget about that, because the "I really don't care, do you" happened when she was on her way to visit a migrant child detention center. Now, it was $39, so an affordable
relatable
piece,
queen.
Relatable. And to be clear,
sarcasm.
Yeah, please. She wore this to and from, not inside the detention center, but where was she going to be photographed and filmed, going in and out of it. And they really dropped the bomb here. Not dropped the, hold on.
Well,
they really, I mean, dropped the bomb, whatever, because her comms chief at the time insisted it was just a jacket, which, I mean, we have heard. But later she admitted that it was a message to the left-wing media, who she criticizes being obsessed with her fashion. Where have we heard that before? Where have we heard that idea that people are too obsessed? And it was actually just a meta statement to the media that's obsessed, and not the media that is on TV.
Crazy.
You know, Rachel Maddow crying over seeing these kids in cages.
Yeah, it's frustrating when we reduce it to just fashion, especially when it is being wielded for better or for worse by women who have soft or hard political power, right? So with Kate especially, so much of the conversation with her diplomatic dressing is centered around praising her for doing a good job. Like, an example would be Oh, coronation weekend. She wore red, white, blue, kind of back to back, and then she like alternated. So when you looked at pictures of her across the whole weekend, she made up the Union Jack flag. Isn't that great? Let's praise her for that. But when there are slip ups, whether it's Melania in her I really don't care jacket, because her comms chief insisting that it was just a jacket before it got spun into a statement to the left-wing media, I think tells you all you need to know. Unless we can weaponize the message, it's just a jacket. That can also be said of as an example from royal fashion, because I know that's kind of how a lot of us approach messaging through fashion, and stretching it to the US politics sphere is kind of a new thing across the board. In 2012, Will and Kate were on a tour of, I think it was the South Pacific, and they visited the Solomon Islands. Owing to some confusion with her wardrobe, she had brought a dress from the Solomon Islands, but instead she was gifted a dress on arrival. So she said, "Oh great, I'll wear this." And it turned out that that dress had been placed in her room by someone on the hotel staff who was from the Cook Islands, nearly 3,000 miles away. So that became such a big mix-up that the Solomon Islands government house had to issue a statement. And they placed all the blame on this one poor woman who I think was trying to promote a local designer to her. And Kate is at the center of this, but there's a lot of deflection done when there's a mix-up or a snafu. We get told it's just a coat, it's just a dress. She has a team of stylists. She has somebody picking these outfits for her. It's not her fault. Usually it's Kate that we hear those things with, but we're starting to hear it with people like Melania and Ivanka Trump. Another one was when Kate was in Jamaica and she met with the prime minister wearing the colors of the opposition party. So that was not great. But again, she has a stylist. It's not her fault. When she does, or when Kate or Meghan do things like wearing local designers on tour, like Meghan wore Johanna Ortiz in Colombia, which was great, a masterstroke, the people at the center of the outfit are the ones that get the praise. So I think that's a challenging mindset that we need to confront if we are going to keep talking about US politics and fashion, and get to the heart of who is planning this, who is executing it, and what are they saying with their clothing.
I think the idea that there's not a message being sent or thought about by whoever is putting these outfits together, or whatever Meghan and Kate might be okaying. The idea that that fashion is meaningless and there's not something deeper. Well, if it was really meaningless, we would not see the Diana cosplay that we've seen from, Meghan and Kate,
many royal women, yes.
Yeah, both all get clocked for things that have been inspired by Diana. And that's super interesting too, because the way that the British royal family both co-opts Diana's memory, this positive legacy, while also being the thing that Diana was escaping. And we realize now wasn't really paranoid over some of the stuff that she thought was happening. It kind of know from NGN that it in fact was, but it's interesting to watch them co-opt this legacy in a way that thankfully no one is really seriously examining it and being like, well, what does this mean for the institution to be relying on Diana to prop them up and bring positive messages and feelings when Diana was famously not treated great by the royal family.
And sort of in a related vein, Diana is one of the royals in the modern era who was credited so much with communicating through her clothing, right? We have the revenge dress. We have some of her looks where she is undertaking charitable work after leaving the firm, which are very relatable. And so that language also gets co-opted in briefings about the palace and what's getting worn to state dinners. Do you remember when Queen Elizabeth II welcomed Donald Trump and Melania to Buckingham Palace in 2019? She wore a Burmese ruby tiara, which at the time, rubies from Myanmar, formerly Burma, had just been like allowed back into the US because we lifted sanctions. That wasn't what she was communicating, though. She instead, apparently, if you believe the online chatter, was wearing this ruby tiara because rubies are a symbol of protection from evil. And Trump was in Buckingham Palace. So, like, again, we can ascribe all these meanings onto what the royals wear because that playbook has been written by people like Diana. Another really notable recent moment was when Elizabeth wore a hat in the colors of the European Union's flag to the state opening of Parliament as Brexit was being debated. That got a lot of headlines for her speaking through her clothing. All I would say is if we are going to accept these statements, quote unquote, when they are favorable towards the people wearing this clothing, we have to also be willing to examine when it says something not so favorable about them.
I agree. And getting back to the inauguration fashion, what's interesting is Oscar de la Renta, the fashion house. We ascribe his name to it, but the designer has been dead for a long time, and he was an immigrant. But he famously, that brand has dressed first ladies from Jackie Kennedy, Laura Bush, Hillary Clinton. A lot of Oscar de la Renta has dressed many a first lady and other women as well, like the second lady this year, Sha Vance. Her velvet dress was apparently a custom de la Renta, also Ivanka, and now there is backlash to it, and I think
is that because Oscar de la Renta was an immigrant? Is that, I'm not brushed up on this particular one.
I think it's more what's seen as the normalization of this kind of
design houses
politics,
accepting them as clients
and just saying, yeah, of course. But then also realizing, like, yeah, I mean, a lot of like rich conservative women are wearing Oscar de la Renta. They're not like alienating their fan base.
The same thing was asked of Carolina Herrera in 2016 because she's dressed first ladies, I think, also back to Jackie Kennedy. She's a Venezuelan American. Meghan Markle loves Carolina Herrera. She's worn her a couple times. That red dress that you either love it or you hate it. Carolina Herrera, an immigrant woman, and she was asked when Ivanka was coming into the White House, will you dress her? And she said, yeah, of course I will, because I dress first ladies and it's for the American public and it's something about unity, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, this is a debate. It's not new, but fashion in relation to the White House and who's in it, I think is going to become more of a grounds for controversy, particularly because of the capitalism of fashion sadly becoming a conversation right now. Sorry, that was like very wordy.
It's okay.
Because fashion is so rooted to capitalism and importing and all of these things, it is tied to politics, again, inherently.
I think there's also this fear of this is not normal was more of a 2016, 2017. People kept saying that. I forget who the woman was that agreed to sing at Trump's inauguration the first time, but basically her career, and she was black woman, just tanked. And that's not happening to Nelly or Snoop Dogg or any of these guys who have performed at these various Trump events for his inauguration this time. And I think there's this fear of normalizing things and maybe even seeing these people as almost royal, because one of the fears is that there's perhaps not a respect of democracy.
Right.
And that's troubling to see through the fashion of these individuals. So what did you think of some of the outfits that we saw at the inauguration? What did you think of Ivanka's green number? Because that was the one that a lot of people pointed to as some of the hardest royal cosplay.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And it wasn't a direct cosplay, although she has copied Kate's outfits in the past. Sometimes Ivanka buys the dress first and then Kate wears it later. And I think that's
interesting.
It is. And I think it's because she has the playbook locked in to dress modestly, to model these quote unquote traditional feminine values, which the values are the problem when you are weaponizing them against other people and to oppress other people. I don't care about the aesthetic. Like, we can do vintage fashion in a way that includes everybody. That would be amazing. That's not what Ivanka does. So her green outfit was very regal. Honestly, it gave me like a hybrid between Kate and Meghan. Do you remember Meghan's like bright green dress? I know the color's not the same, but the draping of it and the modern cut to that look, I think, was present, as well as the color is one that Kate's worn a couple times, and it's like a very regal color. I think it was also the color of Prince Philip's livery, meaning like the color his staff wore. So that's a color we saw recently when he had his memorial service, or the royal family had his memorial service in London. Anyway, all this to say, it was like a mishmash of a lot of royal stuff.
Choosing a regal color was certainly intentional. I also wonder if there was a slight trolling of, because people were going to make the Handmaid's Tale references, and it almost was too easy, to the extent that, did they kind of know this and kind of go, was it
they must this point.
Was it Givenchy that did the
I think so. Well,
the dress?
she also was carrying a Lady Dior bag, the Princess Diana bag. I didn't clock that until I
Oh,
made my video and I zoomed in and I was like, "Oh, okay. I see what's happening here." Right? And it's amazing you brought up the Handmaid's Tale comparison, which is something that Kate's outfits have been compared to in the past. Now it's Ivanka. It's interesting that because that conversation is not like subtle anymore. You know, we call it out very loudly. They continue to wear those colors and to let those comparisons happen. It does. It's like a dog whistle, but worse
I don't
at
really care,
this
do you?
point.
I mean,
Right.
it
Yeah.
really is that. And because it's interesting though, the same people that say, we don't want them talking about our fashion or this is the left wing media, they sometimes do things to play into that.
And then there was Usha Vance in that it was a beautiful pink coat, scarf, belt, boot moment. But it was interesting to see the contrast. And I was wondering about, how is someone like Usha Vance, who is not a white woman for once at the heart of the MAGA movement, going to be incorporated into the visual culture here? And somebody left an amazing comment on my YouTube video. This is coming from an Indian American. She said, Usha Vance's outfit looked like an attempt to appear as safe to white people as humanly possible. Her outfit is essentially Ivanka's, but in baby pink, a color we typically bestow on newborn baby girls. Rather fitting since she is literally new, being birthed onto the magazine. Unlike the rest of the cast who has to work the hardest to prove she is safe and won't disrupt the status quo. To me, baby pink signals that she is safe, feminine, and most importantly, infantilized. By contrast, Ivanka picked emerald green, a color associated with royalty, tradition, and power, something that Usha has yet to fully acquire. That comes from Armchair Authorities on YouTube. I thought that was a brilliant
Oh
piece
my
of
gosh,
analysis.
that is such a good point. And there was also something almost Jackie O
Yes.
about her
Which we've
look,
seen before.
which we've seen before, and we
Mm-hmm.
know Jackie was also influenced by European influences,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's calling back to this traditional time, albeit a democratic
Yeah.
president and first lady. But I think that there is something to be said about the choice of baby pink. First of all, not going to Melania's wearing a dark color,
Not
uh,
polarizing.
not polarizing. She's doing her own thing. It's modest. And I also think
Mm-hmm.
it's to continue to signal those traditional feminine values that they're trying to drag the entire country back to. And I think
Yes.
that's a big part of her outfit was to do that. She and Ivanka are sort of doing similar things with this
Yeah.
modest, conservative, traditional dressing. It's
Right.
just slightly different. And perhaps part of that is the race issue here.
Yeah, I will be interested to see how Usha is dressed or dresses herself in this administration, where it goes from here. Because Ivanka, we've seen in one administration already, and this has been discussed by biographers of the Trumps. She thinks of herself as an American princess. She wanted to parade down the avenue in Trump's first inauguration, and people had to tell her, hey, it's an inauguration, not a coronation. Like, that's well established. But Usha, like, is she going to continue to be a little bit more subtle of a presence, more calming? I don't know. It will be interesting to see.
I also think that to expand off that theory of
Mm-hmm.
sort of this infancy, I think that especially Vance and his wife and certain factions of the party are trying to usher in this is the new kind of republicanism that can come
Yes.
after Trump. You're not going to be Eric and Don, knock on wood. You're not going to be putting those fools into office. But here's a guy that is purporting a lot of the same things that Trump is
Some of
saying
them
that he wants to
worse.
do. Some of them worse, and some of them worse because JD Vance really believes in this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's almost like a rebirth of a new kind of Republican Party and the leadership moving forward. Because I would not be surprised if in a couple of years we suddenly hear JD Vance say, I decided to kind of fall in line with Trump, even though I didn't always believe him, but
Mm-hmm.
I was doing my best behind the scenes to stop. You guys didn't see how bad it was. You'll find out in my upcoming book, which I'm going to release after all of this. And I was doing what I could to protect the country, but this is the kind of, here's the Republican leadership that we need. And I am that person. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy is backed by Peter Thiel. I mean, talk about someone who's been the benefit of programs that assist people in lower income situations, JD
Mm-hmm.
Vance. And that's really, I think, what they're lining him up to be. And I think
Yes.
positioning Osha as this even though she's a lawyer who's clerked for some of the worst people. Remember, she's terrible too. These women were not dragged into this. These women
Yes.
willingly married these people and
Support them.
believe
Yeah.
what they believe. I don't want to hear anything about
Have
poor
their children.
Usha
Yeah.
Vance. No, this woman
We're not
decided to
doing that.
procreate with this man.
Yeah.
And to accept, and she clerks for justices that also stand for these terrible policies.
The fashion, again, as a lens to have these conversations, I just think it's so valuable, especially now when women's voices are so important in this conversation. But yeah, the use of royal traditional value dressing is interesting when you think about this as a moment where I do think the Republicans are establishing a dynasty kind of aspect to their new administration. Whether it's the Trump family or just the Republicanism in general, they do callbacks to the royals. They do callbacks to the Kennedy dynasty. You know, with Melania's Jackie O looks, her inauguration look this year, I drew an immediate comparison to her look when she did visit Buckingham Palace in 2019. The inauguration, she wore navy, that boater hat. To Buckingham Palace, she wore almost the same outfit, but in white. It was like a collared dress with a belt instead of a coat, but visually they are the same. I will try and put pictures on the Instagram.
So, do you think Ivanka read those American royal books and thought that they were historical?
I don't know if she can read, honestly. Side note about Ivanka, the wildest thing I've ever seen from her is she posted when her son was like 7 months old, a picture of him saying, "Happy birthday, Teddy." And everyone was like, "Do you know what a birthday is? 7 months? Huh?"
No.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure if Ivanka does read for pleasure.
She's like the Duke of Orange. You know, I haven't met him yet. Should I be offended? Speaking of fashion and people that were at the inauguration, including billionaires, because we are really for the people.
Living in hell, yeah.
There were some interesting people that showed up, such as the LVMH CEO.
Yes.
Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, this is like the biggest irony as the Trump administration are clothing themselves in this language of populism and being of the people. When you actually look at their actions, the way they're positioning themselves as a royal dynasty and who is in the room with them, that argument falls apart so quickly. So yeah, you know, we moved the inauguration inside this year to the point where some politicians couldn't get in the room. But we did reserve seats for the LVMH CEO, Bernard Arnault. Sure. He is the wealthiest man in France and the 5th wealthiest in the world. Not a politician, a businessman. He was on the dais where the inauguration took place with his son, Alexandre, who is the deputy CEO of Moet Hennessy Liquor, as well as his daughter Delphine, who is the CEO of Dior.
Ivanka had the Dior
the Lady
bag.
Dior bag. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it's all connecting. So these are being taken as signals of a growing relationship between the French luxury tycoon and the Trump family. The Trump family has kind of been courting in Succession style. There's a plot point in Succession where the Roy family goes to court a very liberal media family, and they like pair up all of the siblings with like their counterpart in the other family. That's kind of what the Trumps are doing with the LVMH family. Trump is sending Ivanka to visit their leather factory in Texas. Jared Kushner is getting friendly with Alexandra, which is so interesting when you realize that LVMH sales are in a slump right now. There's decreasing demand, mainly in China, and America is being seen as a more important market for luxury fashion houses. Their other brands include Louis Vuitton, Givenchy, Dior, Fendi, Celine, as well as champagne labels Moet and Veuve Clicquot. Jewelers such as Hublot, I don't know that one, and Tiffany's. So a lot of money, and these societal signifiers are wrapped up here. So they were prominently at the inauguration. I think both sides are courting one another. I think the Trumps are courting this luxury fashion family. I think the family is courting the Trump administration to help alleviate some of the effects of tariffs on their business deals and kind of promote their business interests. And it just leaves an icky feeling in my mouth as we are going into this new administration.
Oh, it totally does, because they know that they can play up to Trump's love of being around important people, being accepted by these important people, and having this power.
Because the cost of eggs is at record highs, we need to be courting luxury fashion houses, obviously.
So I want to say, I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't bring up other billionaires there. You know, Elon Musk. I'm just going to pass on that. I'm just
Bezos,
not going to Bezos and
his
his girlfriend,
I think.
Lauren Sanchez. I don't know if she's
Just
a
wearing a
girlfriend or.
bra.
So here's what stinks. So I listen to the podcast Every Outfit, which talks about fashion, and what sucks is that was an Alexander McQueen corset situation.
No.
So it's gorgeous.
Mhm.
But they also made the point on that podcast that I've been thinking about since then, that was this really inappropriate to wear to the inauguration of Donald Trump? I mean, think about it. She might have been the most realistically on
Yes,
trend for
absolutely.
this event. Of course, a woman in lingerie with, her breasts on display in designer
Which
stuff that
again, I
no
don't
one
have
else
a
can
problem
afford.
with.
I don't have a problem with either.
But if you're also going to tell us that decorum and traditional values matter, don't center this woman. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm kind of obsessed that she was like, well, this looks good. It reminds me, if you've ever, no one has seen Reefer Madness the musical except for 5 of us. But at the end, Anna Geister, I can't say her name. She is splattered in blood. It's a long story. She's going to see FDR, played by Alan Cumming, and she looks in the mirror and she's splattered with blood. And she's like, oh, and she just pulls out her lipstick and touches it up. And she's like, there we go. And she just walks out. I can imagine Lauren looking at herself, unbuttoning a couple more and saying, yeah, okay, now it's appropriate.
Perfect.
and for a Trump inauguration, who can say
Who
that
cares?
she is wrong? Nothing matters anymore.
To leave you with something that is not completely miserable. There was one fashion moment at the inauguration that was getting a lot of, I would say, good press, and it was Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wearing a distinctive collar made out of cowrie shells. So this would have been her judicial collar, which is part of her dress code. I saw some people comparing her to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, saying she was paying homage. No, they were both Supreme Court justices. They both wear the collar as part of their uniform. Ketanji Brown Jackson decided to make hers out of cowrie shells. It is so beautiful. And these shells are a symbol of protection in certain African cultures. There are a lot of different associations with cowrie shells, which were once used as currency. They are also a symbol of female empowerment in some cultures. But across the board, they are thought to offer protection from evil. So again, just the messaging of fashion can mean many things all at once, but this was a moment that I loved.
I loved this too. I thought it was a beautiful moment of descent through fashion and reminding us that, yeah, fashion is meaningful. And it kind of made me chuckle internally, though, because, Queen Elizabeth wearing the rubies,
right, to defend against evil.
But this is actually a little more implicit.
I think
this
so,
is
yes.
This is pretty implicit. So the last thing we're going to talk about in terms of the inauguration and the royals is with a Camilla Parker Bowles connection to the incoming administration. And that would be Scott Bessent. And that is President Donald Trump's choice for Treasury Secretary, who's apparently pro-tariff. So
do any of them know how tariffs work? We
Absolutely
pay for the tariffs.
Not. He was formerly a hedge fund manager who worked with George Soros, but he's like, that was a long time ago. Don't even play with him. I lost his number. Don't think about that. So he was actually an early donor to the Washington, D.C. based Prince of Wales Foundation. Most of this is from Sally Bedell Smith. Is it Bedell or Bidell?
I always say Bedell.
I'm going to say Bedell. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So this reporting is all from the Substack of Sally Bedell Smith. Bedell.
We're struggling with this.
I have not slept a lot. So a lot of this is from that. But basically what happened was 30 years ago, while living in London, Scott forged a relationship with Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles. And he had a crucial role hosting and orchestrating Camilla's breakthrough trip to the United States in 1999. This was obviously right after the death of Princess Diana and helping to bring Camilla out of the shadows. So Scott met the royals through the late Robert Higdon, who had previously worked for Ronald Reagan during his presidency and for the Margaret Thatcher Foundation.
Just a who's who.
Because you can never get away from the Margaret Thatcher Foundation and all the great works that they do. You can't. Hopefully you can hear the sarcasm in my voice. So he was also introduced, though, to Park Molland, who was the spin doctor for Prince Charles, who was in charge of Operation Parker Bowles to make Camilla more palatable. more palatable. And what's interesting also at the time is that Scott is also gay and has a partner, and he had a different partner at the time. He recalled, meeting Mark Boland and Guy Black. And so they were, all evil gays together.
In spite of all the odds, they were able to do crime. No. Wow.
No, but actually Prince Charles, it raised eyebrows when he hired Mark Boland, who was openly
I can't
homosexual.
Be evil. I'm hiring the gays. That's kind of what it's giving.
If he's willing to do anything, including throwing my sons under the bus to make my girlfriend palatable and future queen, why not? This is like after hours chat. If you've made it this far in the podcast,
congratulations.
You're the realist.
Just a tangled web. Circling back, Scott Bessant is Trump's choice for Treasury Secretary. Let me make sure I'm connecting the dots correctly here.
Yes.
Hedge fund manager, but also a little bit of a spin doctor in positioning Camilla Parker Bowles for the U.S.
Certainly helped and appeared to donate a pretty good amount of money early, an early donor to the Washington, D.C. based Prince of Wales Foundation, and ability to get access probably through that as well.
Yeah. So we can hypothesize his greatest skill is getting in the room with powerful people, and
it sure appears
one
that
of
way.
One of them anyway.
But it's interesting how whether it's royals or politicians, all of these things matter. Who you donate to, who you support, who scratches your back in return, and how all of these people are interconnected. And when you even look at the British government, specifically the Tory party, you will see a lot of hires that have been with the British monarchy. Prince William is a great example. Simon Case, who, look him up, he's gotten into quite a bit of trouble.
Jason Knopf.
His role in government. And these people who have gone from working first for the government, then the royals, back to the government, or whatever way, it's all intertwined and just not that separate as people would think. But that conversation about if the royals are political is definitely a
That's
conversation
what I was going to say.
For another time.
Fashion is political. The royals are political. Good night, everybody.
You heard it here first. All right. Mic drop.
Well, that was fun.
That was an unhinged episode.
Was that cathartic as you're moving?
Honestly, it felt good. It felt good to talk about something else and not look around the destruction of my home and just wondering where dish towels are. It's always like a weird thing. You're like, why can't I find this?
Do I own tape? Yeah.
That's the worst. Where are the scissors? So I'm going to get back to that.
Mazel tov on your new home.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying. But that was another episode. If you want to hear this ad-free early or get the videos early, you can go over to our Patreon and do that. We also have discussions that are free if you subscribe to our Patreon, which free level. Just come over and hang out with us. Videos come a week later over on our YouTube.
Yeah, thanks so much for riding this out with us. You know that we will have updates on everything being political in 2025, as well as some fun peppered in, because we are nothing if not two fun-loving modern women.
Yeah, and we actually have some pretty fun stuff coming up in February, including something for you bookworms. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. All right. We will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Scott met the royals through the late Robert Higdon, who had
purposely
who had previously worked for Ronald Reagan during his pregnancy. Ronald Reagan was pregnant. It was crazy.
We don't talk about that.
I'm starting so many rumors, but we don't talk about that. So let's try that again.
Yep.
Who had previously worked for Ronald Reagan during his Shit.
We should do a blooper reel at the end.
Oh, there's going to be bloopers. I see it in our future. If I
do you want me to ask it in the form of a question? I can do that if you need me to. Or do you want to try again?
Wait, I can do it. Hold on. Okay. I'm just leaving this in. Enjoy.